Good evening and welcome to Between the Lanes, episode number 139. I'm Ron.
I'm Shane.
We're here to talk slot cars. It's that time of the week. So, again, welcome Between the Lanes, episode number 139. You can find us on YouTube if this changes over. Oh, geez, I went way too far. Anyway, Between the Lanes. Find us on Facebook. Between the Lanes is the page. Find us on YouTube. Slot Racer is the channel. We now have 139 episodes up, some how-to videos, and some special episodes up over there. Again, find us on Facebook. Between the Lanes is the page. Race results, we don't have any. What are we in, like week 5 of the shutdown? Yeah. So, all right. So last week we had some history. We got more history tonight, but we showed a raceway that was in Pinellas Park, Florida. It was called Hobby Crafters. And I don't remember the address off the top of my road, but we posted up. It'd be nice if someone could shoot by there and take a photo and see if that building was still in existence. And sure enough, it is. So this is a photo of the building as
it from like a street view.
Yeah, I think someone did post a street view of it. It's kind of funny because it makes the building look like it's built on an angle.
Slanted.
Yeah,
I remember seeing that.
So, yeah, the building's not slanted, but that is what the building looks like today. That was a raceway back in 1964. And, of course, today we have Fast Eddie's down in Pinellas Park, Florida. So slot racing is still alive and well in Pinellas Park, Florida. Okay. So before I explain what's on the screen now, we don't talk a lot about HO slot car racing on the show because it's just another type of slot car racing that we're not really experts on, and maybe
I have no clue.
Yeah, maybe someday somebody will start HO version of Between the Lanes. But anyway, HOPRA, which is the national organization for HO racing in the United States, kind of like the USRA and some other organizations out there, they announced late last week that they were canceling the HOPRA Nats for this year due to the coronavirus. And I mean, they didn't postpone it or move it. They've just canceled it for the year. So there will be no 2020 HOPRA Nats, and they will have a 2021 hopefully, and I'm sure they will, but they have canceled. So a lot of talk about states now starting to open up in phases. And that's kind of a national thing too. So like phase 1 would be businesses can start opening up, 10 people or less in the stores. You have to wear masks. And then eventually phase 2 would be 50 or less in a store. But either way, you have to practice social distancing, which is recommended at 6 feet apart between people. So as this opens, then raceways will want to start having races. And, I was sitting here thinking about this, and I've talked to Shane about it a little bit, but, how do you race and keep 6 feet apart at the controller panel? And, you can always practice safe distancing in the pits, but at the panel, at the track is going to be another problem. So I sat here and thought about it, and I came up with this rotation. And basically, we're going to probably have to go, to stay legal and everything, we're going to have to probably go to four driver or 4-man races, where on 8-lane tracks, you'll have 4 guys at the track, but you'll have to race every other lane. And while that may not be an exact 6-foot distance between people, it will be better than standing right next to somebody at the panel. So and then maybe guys on the ends of the track can move a little to the left if you're on red and a little to the right if you're on black, and the guys in the middle can move a little bit. You might get your 6 foot. But anyway, basically you're going to have 4-man races on 8-lane tracks. So how do we do a rotation that's not in anyone's computer systems, lap counting programs, etc.? So sat down and figured this out. And basically you have to run the race kind of like in 2 halves. You have to run 4 heats on the red set of lanes, which are red, green, blue, purple. And then the 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th heat, you can run on the white lanes. So throughout the whole race, this will give everybody spacing or distance. No one will be standing next to one another while they're racing.
Right.
So basically what I have on the screen is I took a piece of paper and put lane stickers on it in the rotation. So we have 8 heats, and then we have 4 drivers. So like if driver starts on red lane, he would run on red while driver 2's on green and driver 3's on blue and driver 4's on purple. So you rotate through the red set. So the guy who starts on red, he'll run red, he'll go to green, he'll go to blue, he'll go to purple. And, green would go green, blue, purple, red, and so on and so forth. So then at the end of the 4th heat, each driver would basically move one color to his right, or he may have to go the way this is, everyone moves one station to their right. So if you start on red, you run red, green, blue, purple. Then you go to black. Then you go to yellow. Then you go to orange. Then you finish on white. So you've went down the track on the red set like we normally do, and you've come back up the track on the black set like we normally do in the Australian style rotation that we've used for many, many years. So with this rotation, it'll keep everybody separate throughout the race. And you can even run around robin in this deal. And one thing I thought about this too was like, what's kind of good about this, here's the good and here's the bad. The good is, let's say you got 12 guys come to a race. You can run 6 guys and have 2 sit-outs, but you're going to have 6 marshals. Like you're going to split your drivers.
Right.
Okay. So instead of like, they say if you went to a race, you had 10 guys there. Some places say, we're going to run a 10-man round robin, and you only got 2 marshals, and you got you want volunteers. Well, in this case, you can't run it that way because there will be no social distancing. So you do have to split up the number of drivers between races. So 4 guys on the track, and if you have, again, 8 racers, then you still have 4 marshals. So yes, you have to run 2 races to get the 8 drivers in. That's kind of the bad thing. But the good thing is, with 4 guys on the track, you'll always have marshals. So,
right. And the way people are going now, I'm sure they won't mind if it takes a little longer than normal. They'll probably be happy that they're racing.
Well, another thing too is, with less people on the track and lanes separating everybody, the races should be cleaner. Should be less track calls.
Yeah, that should make up for
Right. And there's probably a hidden blessing in here that some guys actually may improve their driving skills by having less cars on the track when they're racing. So, it could pay off in the long run that way too. But the other bad thing about this whole deal is when we turn marshal, we're probably going to have to wear gloves, because if I got cooties and I don't know it, and I'm putting cars on in one turn and Shane's over in another turn and he's putting cars on, I'm touching cars, possibly putting cooties on them. He picks the car up, puts it on. Now we're transferring cooties. So we're going to have to marshal in gloves, and we're probably going to have to wear a mask, because I think that's part of the whole phase 1-2 deal. So,
right.
Again, so I've also contacted Steen at Lapmaster, which a lot of raceways use that program. showed this to him, and he said, yeah, we can make a coronavirus program that's already in the like you'd have to update your program online like you do normally when there's new updates for the lap system. But yeah, you can hopefully soon he'll have this done, and it'll be an update, and it'll be in the computer. So if you qualify, you can go right into your heats, and it's only going to let 4 drivers pick the heats, and they'll have to start on the red set. Someone will have to, first choice driver is going to have his choice between red, green, blue, or purple. But yeah, it should work. And then for raceways that don't have lap counting systems that's going to do this, either they'll run a heat and then clear the counter, but they're going to have to do stuff on with pencil and paper. It's going to be like old school,
Right.
20, 30 years ago before we had computers. So just letting the raceways know you're going to have to think about this and prepare for it. So it'll go nice and smoothly for you. So, all right. So I don't have anything else to add on this right now as far as virus and stuff. I do know that in Illinois today they announced that they are going to stay closed until June 1st. So I'm going to assume, I haven't seen an announcement yet, but I'm going to assume that the F2000 Wing Car Nats, which was scheduled at Chicagoland Raceway on May 16th, will probably now be postponed or moved sometime in the near future. So that was really kind of like the only major race left on the books. The OCC Enduro, which is scheduled for this month, also will probably get changed because from what I was told earlier, Indiana and Ohio is also going to follow what Illinois and Wisconsin did today. So those 4 states plus Michigan are kind of working together. So it looks like kind of the central Midwest is going to be shut down till at least June 1st. So that's that. Last week, we had both some tragedy and we had a loss, and this is the part of the show that I hate the worst. So we lost Jay Henry. Jay Henry was a slot car racer that mainly raced out of Buena Park in Southern California. And I guess unbeknownst to most of us, he had been fighting kind of a secret one-year battle with cancer. And he passed away last Thursday. And Jay was a music producer, credits to over 80 gold and platinum albums or songs. He was Grammy nominated a couple of times, never won the Grammy, but A Life of Music. I never met Jay. Jay was a great guy. Talked to him a few times. He always was posting, we got to go back. He was always posting, this isn't cooperating, but okay. So Jay was a retro racer and a hard body racer because they race hard bodies out there too. And he was always posting up pictures of builds and stuff on Facebook. Super clean, super detailed builder. And there's a chassis on one of his chassis. But he was always posting stuff on Facebook. He was always working on stuff. And I always enjoyed watching or seeing, I guess, his builds from start to finish. And we'll miss Jay. And just at a loss of words again, 3 weeks in a row here. I don't know what to say. So also last Thursday, 2 slot racers. This was like the most weirdest deal I think I've ever come across or seen in my life. But, earlier in the day, Joe Ligori had a house fire at his house and started in the garage. I don't even know if they figured out what. I think it was electrical. I don't think they've fully figured it out.
Yeah, but I've kind of chatted with him off and on, and I haven't really asked him. He hasn't really said.
Right, but no one was hurt. His mother-in-law and daughter was in the house at the time they got out. Joe and his wife Lindsay were at work. They didn't really lose the house. I mean, it was just the garage, but they can't be in the house probably for 5 to 6 months because of the smoke damage and some water damage and rebuilding the garage. And Joe's real race cars were in a separate building out back, safe. He didn't lose any of his slot cars. They were upstairs. Like I said, there was no fire actually like in the house. So very lucky. I was very relieved to find out everybody was safe. The dogs made it out. There was no loss of life. And then later that evening, Brian Mosher, who used to live in New York and raced there, and now he lives in Illinois, I believe, or maybe he's in Iowa. He's over there somewhere. He races like at PJ's there and Gladstone, and he runs an assist series and some USCA stuff. They had their furnace malfunctioned, burnt their house down. He lost his slot cars, but again, no loss of life. And there's a group. If you go on Facebook, Slot Car Race Talk, there's a post up if anybody wants to donate any slot car stuff to Brian. It will be greatly appreciated. And
where is that on his personal page? Because I'm pretty sure me and him are friends.
Yeah, I don't know if it's on his personal page, but I did see either Jeff Strauss or Jason Plummer or somebody started a post about he lost everything, and people had stuff to donate. So we're trying to work that.
I'll have to check that out.
Trying to work that out.
Lord knows I got plenty of stuff,
Right. So, but everybody was safe there too. So that's good. They just lost a lot of personal belongings and stuff. So, all right, we're gonna move on because I'm tired of talking. I get sad when I talk about it. So.
Yeah.
I mean, I've been through a flood myself a couple times. I would not wish that on anybody. And the same with a fire. I've never been through a fire, but I've had people close to me go through fires, and it's not good. So.
Right.
So we're going to go into some history. So over on Facebook, over on the Slot Racing Old School Club page, there's a gentleman named David Stevens who has been posting up scans of the old magazines. And every time he posts one up, I got to click on the first picture and then scroll down, and because I like looking at the old ads and the articles and like where slot car racing started, and basically all that's got us to where we are today. So the last week or two, he's been really posting some early stuff like 1963, 1964, and then the other day he posted up 1966, like it was a slot car. I'm trying to think what we would call it. It's like a magazine form, but it's like a yearbook, if you will. Okay, so shows like stuff that's happened in the past year, stuff that's going to happen in the coming year, new releases, and just other information that sometimes normally isn't in the regular magazine, the month-to-month magazine. So anyway, so years ago, I had been told that back in the 60s, they started a slot car model racing hall of fame. And the people that were talking about it at the time, like they were talking about it, but no one ever knew what became of it. And lo and behold, in this yearbook was this 3 or 4 page article about they were announcing the Model Racing Hall of Fame, which was going to be located at Cooperstown, New York, side of the Baseball Hall of Fame. And so it was going to be in what they called the Villages of Museums. And I kind of looked this up a little bit on Google. There are some other Hall of Fame type museums at Cooperstown. They're not connected to the Baseball Hall of Fame, but there's like an area of little museums. They call them the Villages of Museums. And the Hall of Fame, Model Car Hall of Fame, was going to be in the Woodland Museum. And they had set up a board of government and industry leaders, and then they had them comment. I mean, like L.M. Cox, the guy that owned Cox, he was one of those. One of the Rockefellers, who was the governor of New York, was involved in this. And, excuse me, there was about 20 individuals that was going to be involved in this Model Racing Hall of Fame. So they had decided that in 1966 that winners, all major race winners of 66 and beyond would be added. All major race winners, I should say, of 1966 and beyond would be added to the Hall of Fame. At the time, there was an understudy. There was an understudy going on to add the champion, or maybe the winners of the 1965 Ford Model Company and American Model Racing Congress race winners, which was a team league race that was limited to 8 counties in Illinois and Indiana. It drew almost 10,000 entries, and they also wanted to go back and add the 1962 Ford Aurora HO Champ, which that was televised on TV at the time. And they was also thinking about adding the 1966 Ford and American Model Racing Congress Champion also to the Hall of Fame, whoever that would be. And kind of weird, like there's no Hall of Fame for slot cars to this day, or model cars. There is an online one that was started a few years back, but nothing like what this was intended to be back in the inception. So basically, you had the big slot car crash in '67, and most of these people that were on the board, they probably walked away from slot cars, and it just didn't go anywhere. You know, I mean, it was probably a novel thought, but as the slot car scene crashed, less and less interest, it kind of probably more or less got ditched. So in 1965, late 65, Strombecker announced that they were going to do a international race series, if you will. At the time, there was about 87 Strombecker raceways in the United States. The goal was to go race at your local Strombecker raceway. If you were to win the track championship, you would get a real nice trophy, and you would advance to the finals in Detroit. And then in Detroit, you would compete for a free trip to France, another big trophy, and you would also you get free airfare to France. You'd also go to the 24-hour Le Mans race, and then you would race in the race to win a 1966 Plymouth Barracuda, which was brand new, and a $500 Pepsi Cola scholarship. So there's a flyer of the list of official Strombecker raceways that you could register at. I'm sorry I can't blow that up any bigger for you, but there's a picture of one of the Strombecker tracks that they were building back then. This is another copy of the ad that was advertised in Boys Life magazine. This came from the November 1966 issue. I don't know where else. I mean, Strombecker, of course, advertised in the trade magazines or the slot car magazines, but they also advertised this big deal in Boys Life magazine, which if you were a Cub Scout or Boy Scout, you'd get a subscription to Boys Life magazine, and a lot of companies, toy companies and stuff, would advertise in those and back in the day. And you know what was hot, and you know, like you might see Wham-O Frisbee ads or athletic equipment ads. I mean, anything that had to do with boys, a lot of major companies would advertise in Boys Life. So 1966, the champion of the Strombecker Detroit race was a racer named Dave Muchow from Elgin, Illinois. David raced at a local track in the Chicago area. I don't know if there was one in Elgin at the time, but he went there. He won the track championship. He advanced to Detroit, where he won there, and so he won. You know, he's the only American. You know, he's the winner, big winner. He wins. He gets the free plane ride to France, gets to go to 24-hour Le Mans, and he gets to race against 3 other people, which I don't know what all countries they were from, but they had a race for those 4 drivers. And Dave Muchow was the international winner, and he won the Barracuda, and he won the $500 Pepsi scholarship. So I just showed two pictures of him holding his trophies. I think one was from the Detroit race and the other one was from France. Came home. He was a big local celebrity. He was big article about him in the Chicago Tribune. And he was 17 years old at the time. I think he might have been 16 when he started this championship at the local track, but by the time he won the big race, he was 17. So he got keys to a 1966 brand new Barracuda. And like I say, he was a big celebrity. So Dave Muchow, for that reason, was entry number 1 into the Model Racing Hall of Fame. And this is a copy of his certificate that he was presented from the Model Car Hall of Fame, certificate number 1. Dave Muchow, recognized for winning the international championship of the Strom-Becker International Competition. So I met Dave Muchow in 1987 at the IMCA Worlds Race, which was put on by J.P. Van Rossum. And I can only find record of Dave racing in one race. And super nice guy. He would have probably been in his 30s, maybe early 40s when I met him in 88. Dave has passed. I don't know. I know he passed a few years back, but I don't know exactly how many years. Super nice guy. Built super nice, clean stuff. He didn't race like the series around Chicago, but he showed up for the Worlds in 88. He ran in the old timers race. I ran the old timers race. I remember he had a beautiful, I don't think he won concourse, but he was second or something. He had a beautiful P4 Ferrari. And I remember that I thought he should have won concourse, but another guy won, and it was kind of like, yeah, that guy has that on the car and you don't, but his car looks so much nicer. And I'm not going to say he got gypped, but I mean, it was tough, you know what I'm saying? So Dave wound up finishing 11th overall in the field. I think we had 64 entries or something like that, 50 to 60 entries. He finished 11th. He went back the following year and he raced in a team race. And he won, like, we talked about this on past shows, but they had like 4 classes for the 3-hour races. There was like C1 plus, C1 minus, C2 plus, C2 minus, and him and Rich Horde teamed up and they won one of the 3-hour races, like in the C1 plus class. So they didn't win overall, but they won their class within that race. And I didn't check to see where they finished overall, but yeah, Dave was a really good racer. I mean, even in the late 80s when I met him and raced with him a little bit, but I only raced with him at those two races. So again, like I said, he was super nice guy. I kind of wonder to this day, like, where his certificate is and the car he won with and the trophy, because I'm sure he kept all that stuff.
Right.
But it would be cool if that was ever like in the slot car museum in California, because that's an awesome piece of history.
Where's the museum at in California? I know we talked about it, but I can't remember.
It's in Southern California, somewhere around the LA area. I don't know exactly what city it is in, but Scott Bader,
Gotcha.
Scott Bader's there on his, kind of like in the basement of his house. It's a big house with a big basement, earthquake proof and all that stuff. So,
That's cool.
but you can find the Los Angeles Slot Car Museum. You can find some video and stuff of that on YouTube, and
Gotcha.
because they have tours a couple times a year. They had Jay Leno's Garage went there and taped a short segment about it.
Right.
So, yeah, it'd be cool to know.
You know how I've been all week saying we've talked off and on. I keep saying I'm supposed to be in California now.
Right.
It's just like
right. So, as far as I know, David might have been the only entrant into the Model Racing Hall of Fame I didn't find any evidence or anything about any of the other previous winners to this one being inducted. So he may be the one and only,
Gotcha.
for all I know. So a great honor and a good piece of history. And so there you have it. So, went too far again. So 2 days ago, the 21st of April, was the 55th anniversary of Buzzarama Raceway in Brooklyn, New York. And this is a picture of outside Buzzarama. We had a special episode almost a year ago about Buzzarama. Me and Mr. Eric Shirey went there, and there's Eric pictured with Dolores Perry on the left, and then we have Buzz Perry on the right. And Buzzy opened up Buzzarama on April 1st, or April 21st, 1965. It's been there ever since, 55 years, as of a couple days ago. He has all the original tracks there. And when I'll get to that in a minute, but me and Eric went there last year because we wanted to go see the place. Never been there. It's a American Raceway mecca. Orange track, the Banked Black or the Royal, the Windsor, the Yellow, and the Blue King. And of course the Emperor down in the basement, which nobody gets to see. So Howie's been posting up some slot car racing history on his personal Facebook page. And a week or two ago, he posted up Model Racing Journal, which was more like a newspaper. It was printed on newsprint from June 16th, 1969. And I had seen this and kind of read this article a couple years ago, and then Howie reposted it, and I was kind of rereading it, and just like going back through it, reading and catching a few things I hadn't caught before. And this was the Maricopa race, which was held at Buzzarama on Memorial Day weekend, 1969. And they thought it was going to be a super big race because it had a $7,500 payout, which $2,500 was cash for the pros, and $5,000 of it was merchandise to the amateurs. And the $400 first place prize for the pros was the largest first place prize in cash ever given out at a slot car race up to that date. So they expected a lot of people, and they only got 137 entries total between the amateurs and the pros. There was 95 amateurs, which was won by Steve Lesh of Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, and there was 42 pros, and the pro race was won by Mike Stubbe. And again, they thought they were going to have more entries because the previous year, when they had the ARCO race in Columbus, Ohio, at Tom Thumb East, they had 164 entries, which was had been the biggest amount of entries they'd had at a slot car race up to that date. So they didn't get the numbers and stuff they were looking for. And this is kind of a funny part of the story. So everyone always talks about, especially back in the day, being connected to the teams and getting trick team parts and all that stuff. So, you got Stubbe there, you've got Brady there, you got Emmett, you got, running Keen Motors, you got Sucris is there, trying to run the B-Can motors and make them run, which over a couple of days they got them going faster and everything. But there was an independent guy named Tom Conlon who was, I guess he was down in Indianapolis, watching practice for the 500. He must have been there for Carburation Day. He drives back from Indy to New York, and he lives in Connecticut, so he's going to race at this race in the pro class on his way home. Gets there, and his motors don't run good, so he decides that he needs to get a couple armatures. He has a gift prize certificate from Cobra that he wanted to race previously. There's a guy there from Cobra. He says, "Hey, can I use this certificate?" And the guy goes, "Yeah."
Right.
So he gets a couple armatures off the wall, goes back to the hotel, builds his 2 motors with his new armatures, and he comes in the next day and he TQs the pro race. And his TQ time was a 4.818. And I guess immediately when he TQ'd Howie and a couple others yelled that the timer was broke. How can this nobody guy, buy arms off the wall and then out qualify us? But they said in the article, when he was practicing Friday night, that his car was really good, but he just didn't have any motors. So he went up and he got a couple armatures, went back and rebuilt his motors, and boom, he's on the pole. So he winds up making the main and everything. And it winds up that, here's a picture of the main event. And you'll have to watch this, but this picture shows the track, and it's yep, I've seen that view of the track before because I was there. So
Right.
You got Brady down on black, and Stubby's on purple, and Phil Rubin's on yellow, and then this Tom Conlon guy, he's on blue, and then Howie's next to him, and Tony P is next to Howie, and Bob Emmett's up on red lane, and missing would be Russ Boyington, who had already fell out of the race, so he probably would have been on orange lane because Howie's on green. So Stubby wins. Howie was second. Jerry Brady was third. Bob Emmett was fourth. Tom Conlon was fifth. Tony P was sixth. Phil Rubin was seventh, and Russ Boyington was a DNF in eighth place. And the next picture is the picture of the King track today. I took this picture when I was there a year ago. And, it's still the same track other than it's been retopped, resurfaced, and it sits in the same place. The background is a little different. They've painted the walls and spruced the place up since 1969, obviously. But, when I was reading the article, I'm like, wow, they were there on Memorial Day, 1969. And it dawned on me that me and Eric was there 50 years later on Memorial Day weekend, 2019. We didn't even plan that, you know what I'm saying? But it was just wow, we were there on the 50th anniversary of that race. How cool is that? And then we got to run on the same track that all these great pro racers of the 60s ran on. Yeah.
Right.
And then Buzzy hosted the 1979 USRA Wing Car Nats on the same track. So there's been a lot of famous drivers that have made laps or raced on that track. And so when I called up Eric, I sent him the article. I said, "You got to read this and then call me." And he's like, "Why skim through it? What am I missing?" I said, "Dude, we were there 50 years on the anniversary of that race." And he was just totally blown away. And I said, this is the only track that exists that's still up and running that all these guys ran on. It's the only track left.
Right.
That all these famous guys, and I said, and you got to run on that track. He was even more blown away. So,
yeah.
Pretty interesting, pretty cool deal. Some of you out there are probably laughing, but, it's not every day you get to do things or experience things. And it's pretty awesome when you sit back and think about it. So, like I said, Eric, he's already we got to go out there again. I go, I know we do. So, but they're shut down with the coronavirus thing too. But
yeah, but that's just me and Bobby. Bobby, he's originally from Massachusetts, and he'd always talked about, we need to take a weekend trip,
right,
or get a bunch of us from the Mid-South gang or whatnot, and go to
Ashland.
Yeah,
yep.
He wants to run on the Purple Mile.
Yep, gotta go to Modelville and run on the Purple Mile. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, I'm just like, I mean, you know me.
Right.
I'll just say, just let me know, and I'll take the time off
And
to go, or
right.
fly, or whatever. I don't care.
And see, that's another track that's got a, you know, like that was the first Purple Mile ever built. You know, it was at Playland. You know, every picture you see of the Purple Mile from back in the day is from Playland. I mean, that's like, it's a very famous track, and it was number one, and it's the only one that we know of that exists. It's a piece of history, and
yeah, I mean, and other than that too, I've never been in Massachusetts, so it's like,
right,
why not? You know,
and not only
Bobby's from there, and he hasn't been there since he was a kid, so
right. And you go there and you run the Purple Mile. You can run American Hill Climb with the crossovers if you've never done that. And you can run on the Bank Black Royal if you've never done that. I mean, it's like three.
Do that during the day and try and, you know, catch a modified race somewhere, a local, you know, short track around there.
Right.
You know, modifieds are big up there, so.
Yep. And then if you want to run a modern track, they've got a Girding King track there, and then they've got like this kind of figure 8 type track that they do rentals and stuff on. So it's like the best of both worlds. You got like the Girding King, and then you've got these 3 great old American tracks.
Right.
So yeah, it's awesome. You know, I mean, like, you know, when I started racing, I mean, that's all pretty much we raced on was like old American tracks, you know, and then, you know, Hasse started building tracks, and, you know, then Girding and Tunkel and Chris Dadds.
I think I've raced on just, you know, I've been on all kinds of tracks. I couldn't tell you.
Yeah, if you've seen pictures.
It's like I just drove race. I don't.
Right,
you know?
right. If you've seen pictures of all the American tracks, I'm sure that you've run an American track at some point since you started racing.
I like to say that, but I honestly don't know.
Right.
I don't.
I mean, you know, okay, so there's the place, where's the place that has the orange with no S's now? Is that North Carolina? They got the drag strip there. We talked about it on the show. It's been a couple of months ago.
Yeah, I remember that. I'm just trying to think where it was at. I don't think I've been there yet.
Yeah, but it's in North Carolina, isn't it? Yeah.
There was like 2 or 3 tracks in North Carolina that like don't have any series races.
Right.
And you don't really know about them. Then you see it's like, why haven't we been there?
Right. You know? Right. Yeah, it'd be cool. Like, okay, so like for me, it'd be cool to like take a drive down and stop at the there's a hill climb there in I think it's in West Virginia, and then I think they also have an orange down there without S's in it, and then go down to North Carolina and run on that one because they just redid it, and that'd be cool to do too. You know, like run 3 American tracks, you know, in a 2-day trip.
Right.
That'd be kind of awesome too. But there's no more history. I mean, you know, like Buzzies is the holy grail. You know, it's just
right. Yeah.
It's
so that me and you always talk about chassis. That's like the OG.
Right.
You know?
Right. Yeah, he's the OG, the original gangster, right there, Buzzy.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's like, you know, anybody, you got to go to Buzzies. Like, it's definitely worth it. You know, it's.
So it's funny today because you know Bobby got pizza for dinner, and I was like, send me a picture, and he's like, why? And I was like, I don't know. I just miss really good pizza. You know what I mean?
Right.
It's like you go to New York, get some pizza or something while we're there, check it all out.
Right. So, all right. So I've got the screens off. So High Spove, shirt from '87, still fits. It's not too tight.
Top button.
I probably have a little more room in her, Spove, if I didn't have my T-shirt on, but.
Right. Funny.
So.
You get a kick out of it when I kind of chimed in on that post. You know?
Right. So
I think sometimes it's funny when people read posts where it's like I'm picking on you, and it's just like,
no,
you should go race with us.
No. It was really good fun. I mean, you know, hey, if you can't, you got to be able to take it. I mean, no hurt feelings. I thought it was pretty funny. I get chime in too, and you know, like Spove's like, does the shirt still fit? Yeah, it still fits. Pants don't, but the shirt.
Yeah.
Because I was probably, because back in '87, I probably had about a size 30 waist, you know.
Oh, yeah, I think I had a size 30 waist when I was probably in middle school.
Yeah.
Actually, no, I didn't. I just remember now I was actually bigger in middle school.
Yeah, well, I've put on
I'm a
about
fat teenager. I ain't gonna lie.
put on about half
Way
of
too weight.
yeah, I've put on about half a foot on the waist since then. So anyway, so
I hate to see where we're at now after all this quarantining or social distancing and
right.
yeah, just
So I
I'm
had
running out of stuff to work on slot car wise, so it's like, yeah, I'll cook dinner, or I'll go make something to eat.
right. So I know last week we were going to talk a couple topics on the show this week, but we're getting out of time anyway, and they're going to be long drawn out between me and Shane. But like I had a guy send me a message. Can you talk about armature timing? Okay, we'll try and get to that next week.
Right.
And a couple weeks ago, you had somebody ask about ball bearings and the ABEC numbers and stuff, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
So basically, ball bearings are rated on an ABEC scale, and and I'm just reading what I kind of found online. It's an industry accepted standard for the bearings. I got to look close to this. For the tolerances of a ball bearing, it was developed by the Annular Bearing Engineering Committee, ABEC, of the American Bearing Manufacturers Association, ABMA. The ABEC scale is designed to provide bearing manufacturers dimensional specifications that meet the standards of precision bearings in a specified class. Manufacturers who produce equipment that require bearings must also know the dimensional tolerances to design parts that will accommodate a bearing. There are 5 classes from largest to smaller tolerances. So the lower the number, the lower the tolerance. So there's 1, 3, 5, 7, 9. The higher ABEC classes provide better precision and efficiency and the possibility of greater speed capabilities, but do not necessarily allow the components to spin faster. The ABEC rating does not specify many critical factors, such as load handling capabilities, ball precision, material, Rockwell hardness, degree of ball and raceway polishing, noise, vibration, and lubricant. Due to these factors, an ABEC 3 classified bearing could perform better than an ABEC 7 bearing. Bearings not conforming to at least ABEC 1 cannot be classified as a precision bearing as their tolerances are too loose. So basically in slot cars, you see a lot of, some companies will list the ABEC rating on their packaging and some do not. Most of your slot car bearings that you would buy from slot car manufacturers are 3, 5, and 7. I don't ever recall seeing anyone claiming to sell an ABEC 7 bearing for slot cars. If they did, I don't think we could afford them. They would probably be a $30, $40 bearing. And I don't even know if they make ABEC 9 in what slot car bearings are referred to as miniature precision bearings. I don't think they make ABEC 9s in miniature bearings. I think they go to 7 and that's it. So the biggest difference in bearings is where they're manufactured. There are American companies that make very good ball bearings, but they are more expensive than bearings found in Japan and Europe. So bearings made in Europe, the number one, to me, the best bearing you can buy for slot car use is GRW bearings, which are made in Germany. They're a little more expensive than, say, the better bearings that come out of Japan. And the American bearings, again, the American bearings are kind of priced between the German bearings and the Japanese bearings, but you can find good or adequate bearings from Japan that will compete with the American bearings, but I don't think there's any bearing that really competes with a GRW bearing. I mean, they are super precision bearings. And depending on what class you run, I mean, if you're running Group 7 cars, you want the best bearing you can buy. If you're running like GT12s or like maybe Group F or box stock 12s, International 15s. You can get away with the better Japanese bearings, and for sure the American bearings. The bearings made in China, they could be ABEC 3, but I would say they're more probably like ABEC 1. I mean, they'll work good like on retro car fronts. You could probably get by with them in flexi cars if you could run bearings in flexi cars and you was running like, say, FK motors or 16D motors or something like that.
Right.
You're going to have to replace them more often, but when you can buy them for $1 or $2 a piece, okay, fine. But do they make your car go any faster? Not necessarily. It just makes your car smoother, have less vibration. I mean, I always tell a story like years ago when I first started racing 27. I went to 2 27 races, and both races in practice had a bearing blow apart in practice. So the first race, it was like we parked the car because I had another car. So I went to the second race, run the car, blows the bearing out. Randy's like, "You want to put new bearings in it?" I'm like, "Just take the bearings out and put oil lights in it."
Right.
And he's like, "Okay, that'll get us through today." I said, "No, get them lined up right and they spin nice, just leave them in there. Because I don't believe that the ball bearing is going to make me go any faster than the oil light. And I know that the oil light is not going to blow apart. You know what I mean? Like,
well, that's just like
so I ran the whole season, like 8 races with oil lights in the car.
Yeah, I was going to say the car I built for GT12 to run at last year's Nats.
Right.
I had bushings in it.
Right.
And everyone was surprised, and it was because of that story.
It was the winning car.
He told me, and it's like, yeah, the only way that oil light's coming out is if I blow the pillow block out of the thing. You know what I mean?
Right.
So it's like, yeah. And like you said, you get it lined up right and all that. And
yeah.
I did. And it was like, yeah,
it wasn't
worries in that race that that car was in an accident. I'd blow bearings.
Right. When we started running retro racing, Randy was putting ball bearings in the cars, and then he was like, "This is getting expensive." I said, "Just put oil lights in them then," because he was building lots more cars, and he's like, "Okay." So there was a phase there of probably 10 or 12 cars that we raced for a while. We just had oil light bushings in them instead of ball bearings, and we didn't have any problems. So as long as you oil them and use good oil, oil lights will last. So, but I mean, again, ball bearings don't necessarily make you go faster.
Right.
So.
And there's some ball bearings that are, it's weird enough, changing ball bearings out in motors, arms been reconditioned, you build a motor and put bearings in it, it's like, things are rough,
Well, that's right. Well, and see, that's the thing too. I mean, you gotta like in motors, you have to solder the bearing in, and if you're not careful, you will trash that bearing just soldering it in.
Right.
With the flux and stuff, it gets in there and etches the balls in the race, and like in a lot of rear ends of cars or chassis, will epoxy them in or Loctite them in to keep from soldering them in. So there's some other tricks about bearings that, again, that's another coming. Because I was thinking about that the other day. I need to do a video on this, and it'll blow you away, but it works. So yeah. So for this week, that's all I got. I mean, next week we'll talk about some motor stuff. I guess there'll be 3 motor topics unless something else comes up that, and I'll try to put off any history I find off to the following week. Everybody's telling me I love the history. So,
yeah,
it's like, okay, but yeah, I like reading that old stuff too, and it's kind of cool because it's sometimes
some of it that's neat, and there's some of it that's like I wasn't even born yet. I have no clue what you're talking about.
Well, yeah, I mean, when they were talking about this Hall of Fame, I was 3 years old, so I didn't know what slot cars were, but like. Again, I remember a discussion. And if I remember, I was telling somebody about this earlier. I'm pretty sure it was Ken McDowell and Bob Haynes, and John Ford was there, and we were talking about there should be a Slot Car Hall of Fame. And I think Bob Haynes says, well, yeah, they started one in 1966, and I don't know whatever happened to it, and yeah, nothing ever happened to it, So we talked John Ford into starting the Slot Car Hall of Fame, the Scale Out Racing News one. That was back in the early 90s, and he put it in the magazine and kind of kept up, adding people for a few years, and then it kind of went by the wayside. So there's no true Slot Car Hall of Fame, if you will, and I don't know who would do it, who should do it. You'd have to come up with some rules as to who to induct, and go from there. So I don't know. Someone out there is listening, wants to start a Hall of Fame. Talk to me. We'll talk about it or something. But
yeah, 'cause, you could do all.
You could do it. You could do you could do a really cool online one nowadays.
Right.
You could almost do a Facebook Slot Car Hall of Fame page, and
right.
It's all there.
Inductees every year, stuff like that.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And you'd have to go back and just put a bunch of people in, just because it would take you a year. If you're only going to induct 10 guys a year,
right.
There's 50 guys from the 60s. You're talking that'd take you 5 years before you got anybody else in there, and
right.
There's some other people. Then you got to work on the 70s and the 80s.
Like a Hall of Fame timeline. Who were the top guys?
Right. Well, I think you'd have to do it. I think you'd have to do it in categories. Like you'd have to do maybe 5 racers, 5 industry people, like manufacturers, distributors, magazine people, maybe, or, okay, here's, racers, manufacturers, distributors, media, and then raceway owners.
Right.
And then maybe even a 5th, maybe 5 categories, 5 guys each, put 25 guys in a year. So yeah, something, and you can put in like honorary people. You can put a lot of the older people in, and that are gone. Or
you need to do a show on like upcoming, kids that are pretty good.
Sure.
You know what I mean?
Right.
Well, we ever really talk about the older guys.
Well, see, I have problems with a lot of Hall of Fames because, like, we'll take the NASCAR one for example. So.
Oh yeah.
To me, that's a farce. Like you put in Rusty Wallace. Okay, fine. He went in way early, I think. But Roger Penske, who gave Rusty Wallace his break into NASCAR, and Roger Penske should have went in there before Rusty Wallace did. Because if it wasn't for Roger Penske, there wouldn't have been a Rusty Wallace possibly.
I think the one they're talking about now is, I think, Carl Edwards was inducted, not necessarily saying he's going to get in, but or he was a name. And it's like, I like Carl Edwards. I was a fan of his. It's like there's so many other names out there that should come before him.
Oh yeah, there's tons of guys from the 50s and 60s that should be in there, but they put these modern guys in way before them, and maybe they need to go 5 modern, 5 older, or 5 Grand National, 5 Monster Cup or something.
Yeah, I was talking to Bobby probably a month ago. It probably wasn't that long ago because, they've been running the old races.
Right.
From back in the day or whatnot.
Right.
And it was like late 80s, maybe early 90s, and I was watching a race, and it was just looking at that, just thinking about where it's at now, it's just like it's night and day.
Night and day difference.
But true, I enjoyed more so watching that race than I did today's race.
Well, it's like, yeah, you got to go watch like the 60s and 70s stuff. Like everyone says, well, that was horrible because only maybe 1 or 2 cars had finished on the lead lap, but those were still good races. It's just they didn't have the pit crews, the professionalism of the pit crews back then. And, they had lots of, blown engines and things like that. And it
was just more hands-on than it was prefabbed or molded, or
right,
whatever.
Right. Those were
that's just
stock.
Me, that's kind of up my alley. I'm more of a hands-on guy than just pull this part off a mold.
Right.
You know?
Yeah, they had stock cars, and they had, no aerodynamics, if you will. Like, they didn't go to wind tunnels and all that stuff, and they didn't make the cars.
And they had wind tunnels, but it was one of those deals. Okay, we
Right.
take a car to a wind tunnel. It wasn't like, you had to almost take, all right, we're going to take a flat piece of sheet metal. Now we got to make this a little bigger,
right?
A little, and that's just.
But I mean, slot cars have evolved the same way too. I mean, you look at the stuff that was ran in the '60s. Believe me, I've run some of that stuff. I don't know how that was any fun, but.
Well, I've seen pictures.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, that's just like where I started in the '90s when I started racing to what I'm running now. I mean, just controllers.
Right.
Alone. It's just like night and day.
Yep. So.
Yeah.
All right. Well, that's all I've got. You got anything else?
No.
Okay. So.
I think we covered most of the stuff.
And if anybody wants a copy of that Coronis rotation, I can send you a picture on Messenger or email or something like that. Next week will be episode number 140. And be safe. Wash your hands. Don't touch your face. Or, well, you touch your face, I guess, after you wash your hands. But be safe. Be careful. Look after one another. We're all in this together. It's getting better, slowly but surely. Starting to maybe see
check in on your fellow racers, see how everyone's doing. I know I've seen some posts on my end that some people are having harder times than others just because they're used to constantly being on the go. And now it's like they can't do anything and they're getting stir crazy. So you'd be surprised what a text message or a phone call would do.
Some, I know. And some people's finances are starting to catch up with them and stuff like that too. So, it is what it is, and we'll all get through this. Yeah. Some will get through it better than the rest of us, but, life's not fair. But the word of the show this week is J, J-Y for Jay Henry. Rest in peace. And until next week, everybody be safe, and we'll see you next week.
See ya.